by speaking to the press attaché at the United States Embassy here in Ghana, Matthew Asada. Matthew, good morning.
Good morning.
Right. Now, thanks for your time, Matthew. I think the first and most important question is, what exactly does the U.S. government consider to be undermining democracy?
So thank you for having me on the radio this morning. One of the things that we're very proud of is Ghana's long history of democracy and peaceful transition of power. We see it as a model for West Africa itself. So these restrictions that have been announced, and again, as of today, there are no individuals that have been targeted, but these are more preventive to encourage peaceful democratic elections here in Ghana. And these are in line with restrictions and policies that the United States has announced for other countries. So the law itself talks about anyone that has been involved with, manipulation or rigging of electoral process, intimidating, coercing, or preventing people from exercising their rights to freedom of association and peaceful assembly, coercion or prevention of political party representatives or folks from disseminating their views, or engaging in any activity designed to improperly influence the conduct or outcome of an election.
Okay. Now, I've got to ask, will the U.S. government wait for a person accused of any of these offenses to be convicted of it in court before the visa restriction will be applied?
It's a really good question, and this is something that we can't comment about individual cases or individuals, as because visa records are confidential. And so whether a person has been targeted or not, that is the matter between the United States government and that individual. Of course, we would share information with that individual if this restriction were to apply, but I cannot comment about any particular matters or, again, how those actual restrictions come into effect.
So it is possible that people might get visa restrictions even if they haven't been convicted of any offenses that fall under your definition of undermining democracy.
Correct. This is not necessarily linked to a judicial action in a certain country, but it's overall looking at the eligibility of a person for a visa under U.S. visa law. So it's the totality of the circumstances, the information that is available to us and to the visa officers as they are making those decisions.
The question that's being asked, forgive me, is to the effect that, yes, everybody agrees that every country has a right of admission. Indeed, you can use your own rules to admit or refuse anybody visas. But which standards would you use? Would it be arbitrary? Because that has been the accusation, and the claim is that it can be arbitrary if you have not subjected it to a judicial process and determined so to be the case that I have undermined democracy or acted in any way that goes against any of the laws, which are predominantly what you have stated in the statement you issued.
Yes, I understand. Obviously, your question and that of your listeners, you want to ensure that visa policy overall is not arbitrary manner. And so I can tell you that our officers that are on the visa line here day in and day out, facilitating that legitimate travel to the United States, they are applying the law consistently and using all information that's available to them at the time. So again, we have the law that determines the eligibility and ineligibility for visas, and we have our officers that are trained in how to apply that law. So this ineligibility is like any other ineligibility that exists. and we rely upon our officers to make those determinations, not in an arbitrary or capricious manner, but in a consistent manner, to uphold U.S. immigration law.
Now, let me ask you, the U.S. cannot really run away from a certain reputation for choosing where to defend democracy and where not to around the globe. So you are often accused of interfering. What would you say to those who suggest that that's what is happening here?
As a matter of policy, the United States is supporting and advancing democracy in Ghana and all around the world. So we like to partner with those countries and with those peoples that aspire to a better future with democratic representation. And as you noted, this policy is not just something that is here in Ghana, but it's in other places. But it's done as part of our partnership with those governments, with those peoples who also aspire to free democratic elections.
You said that this is not the first time you are doing this, and it applies to other countries too. But what is the trigger for the issuance of this statement now? Was it because, for example, that there was a meeting of the former President John Dramani Mahama with some members of the diplomatic corps?
So this is the first time that we are applying this here in Ghana, but this is not the first time that we've applied it around the world. In other countries such as Georgia, Guyana, Nigeria, so across all different continents, and not just here in Africa. This is obviously being done in advance of the elections that are happening here every 4 years, just like in the United States. But it's not linked to any particular meeting, and our ambassador is meeting regularly with the government of Ghana, with the political parties, to relay our interest in a fair, peaceful, and credible election here in Ghana, and our willingness to partner with anyone that shares those same aims.
Does this suggest, since this is the first time that the United States is issuing such a restriction for Ghana, does this suggest that the United States government anticipates a heightened chance of the undermining of our democracy this year?
No, by no means. This is something, again, that the United States is applying as a tool, as part of our foreign policy in countries like Ghana and others, but it's not any reflection of a heightened concern about this election, but it really is a preventive and good government measure to show that we support the democratic aspirations of the Ghanaian people.
Now, to put this in proper perspective, can you explain to me when the statement says the use of measures designed to intimidate, coerce, or prevent political party representatives, voters, or members of the civil society or the media from voicing or disseminating their views or engaging in any other activity designed to improperly influence the conduct or outcome of an election? Now, what element will go in determining what measures are designed to intimidate, coerce, or prevent political party representatives?
No, I know that's a lot, and I don't want to get into kind of all of the details of how one thing will be determined or another, but let's break it down, is that in a democracy, people have to have freedom of expression, freedom of association, and these freedoms are critical. And so if we see that people are being prevented from expressing their voice, or people are being prevented from associating, those are things that might raise additional questions. But at this point in time, it's not something that we're able to say, okay, this specific action or that specific action. Remember, this is the totality of an individual's record, what they might have done, and we'll leave that to the individuals that are coming before their visa appointment. And we hope that this does not have to be applied. We hope and we believe that here in Ghana, the parties, the individuals are committed to a fair and democratic process.
Except that clarity, it's important in this case. If you intend to apply something to me, it might be fair for me to get an understanding of exactly what the details are. Are you saying that there's a published document that details exactly what measures we are talking about in this instance? Or that determination is entirely left to your officers at any capacity that they want to determine or use, or which criteria they want to use in determining these measures and the other words used in here?
So as I said, we have our Immigration Naturalization Act that is the overall law determining eligibility and eligibilities. We have regulations that help the officers to apply various provisions of those laws. But right now, at this time, what I want to leave your listeners with is that this restriction, the announcement, is something that is being done to support Ghana's elections in December. And we hope that this is not something that is ever have to be used, but it is a tool, and it is meant to deter anyone that might be thinking about doing so.
We also see here that the statutes you're quoting also refer to violence against the media and civil society organizations. You have a mechanism in place for determining when that has happened?
So this is something that we're really concerned about. Again, violence against the media, about journalists. It's really important that journalists have the ability to operate because, frankly, they're the ones that are holding governments to account, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Ghana. But we believe that a free press is integral to a democracy. And so we take any instances of journalist intimidation, of journalist persecution, of journalist assault very seriously. And these are things that we are talking with our partners about all the time, whether it's the Ghana Journalists Association, whether it's the trade unions, whether it's the ministers and the Ministry of National Security. These are items that come up in our conversations in private, and it's also things that we talk about publicly as well.
Very well. I want to say a big thank you to you for your time with us this morning. Matthew Asada, press attaché at the U.S. Embassy here in Accra.
Thank you for having me this morning.